Hello, college writing students. Focus. That's what we need to talk about. I have talked with all of you about your essays, your voice essays, and the most common struggle that you had with that essay was how to focus it. I understand that struggle. The question that I gave you was not a super specific question. I just asked you to talk about how Amy Tan deals with the theme of voice in her essay. So there were many directions that you could go. And the last time you did an analytical essay, we generated a thesis together. So this is the first time that I have asked you to come up with your own thesis. And I asked you to do it in response to a maybe kind of nebulous question, deliberately, because I wanted to give you lots of ways to go. So the first thing to keep in mind is that a thesis sentence is different from a purpose statement. Those of you who were in speech remember that we talked about purpose statements, which we don't usually say in a speech, or in an essay for that matter. A purpose statement is something like, the purpose of this essay is to analyze Amy Tan's use of voice in mother tongue. That is your purpose. That is not your thesis. Your thesis is what you want to say. So when I say focus, I mean that your essay needs to say something. And that something should be fairly specific. So we want to avoid really broad, general kinds of statements, such as Amy Tan in her essay Mother Tongue shows that voice is very important. That's true. That's a true statement. But it is such a broad statement that it's hard to develop it. And that arguably it doesn't really say very much. Now it is possible to get too specific. You could, for example, say, in Amy Tan's essay Mother Tongue, there's a difference between the way Amy Tan talks to her husband and the way she talks at an academic conference. You could support that point, but you could do it in a paragraph. It's just not enough. It's actually too sharp of a focus. So you need to say something, but you need to make sure that that it's not too specific. Here's a good example, and I asked Connor if I could use his. I'm going to read it. Paradoxically, while trying to define language to help us understand voice, Tan shows us that voice is not defined by language. Let me read that one more time because it's kind of complicated. Paradoxically, while trying to define language to help us understand voice, Tan shows us that voice is not defined by language. When I read that sentence, which comes at the end of the introduction, I know what this essay is going to say. I know that it's going to use the idea of language to help me understand what voice is. And I know that it's also going to say that voice is not defined by language. It's kind of two sides of a coin. That's a good thesis. Once you have a thesis, in order to have a focused essay, two things need to happen. One is you need to follow through. So in a thesis like this that has two parts to it, you need to make sure that you have both of those parts, that you develop both parts of the thesis. Your thesis might have one or two or three kind of parts to it, but make sure you follow through in developing whatever that thesis is. And secondly, think about transitions. As you transition from paragraph to paragraph, from point to point, write transitions that remind us of the main point. So if your thesis has to do with the respect that Amy Tan comes to have for a variety of voices, and you're going into a paragraph about, let's say, SATs, you could write a transition something like this. Tan herself did not feel like her voice was particularly respected when it came to standardized testing and the way teachers responded to her use of language. That takes us into that specific paragraph, but it also reminds us of the main focus, which is respect. It takes us back to the thesis. So let your thesis control your essay and let your transitions come back to that thesis. Keep those things in mind. Let me know if you have questions as you revise this essay. God bless you.